You've been told your whole life that happiness is the goal. Work harder, achieve more, find the right person, move to the right city, and then finally, you'll feel it. But here's what almost no one tells you. The more directly you chase happiness, the faster it disappears. Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist, a neurologist, and a Holocaust survivor. He lost his wife, he lost his parents, he lost almost everyone he loved inside the Nazi concentration camps. He had every reason to give up on meaning entirely. And yet what he discovered in the darkest place imaginable became one of the most important ideas in the history of psychology. Once you understand it, you will never think about happiness the same way again. Stay with me. Think about the last time you achieved something you really wanted. A promotion, a trip you'd been planning for months, a relationship that finally felt right. There was a moment, maybe a few days, maybe a week, where it felt exactly the way you imagined. You had arrived. This was it. And then, quietly, without warning, the feeling faded. You were back where you started, just with a different backdrop. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill, the idea that we quickly return to a baseline level of happiness no matter what happens to us, good or bad. We adapt. The excitement becomes ordinary, and ordinary eventually becomes invisible. But Frankl saw something deeper beneath this pattern. He wasn't just describing a psychological loop. He was pointing to a fundamental misunderstanding of what humans actually need. He wrote, "Happiness cannot be pursued. It can only ensue." What he meant was this: happiness is not a destination you can aim for directly. It is a byproduct, a side effect. It appears when you are doing something else, something that matters. When you make happiness your primary goal, you turn it into an object. And the moment you try to hold it, it dissolves. Not because you've done something wrong, but because you've aimed at the shadow instead of the thing that casts it. This is not abstract philosophy. You've probably felt it. The vacation that was supposed to fix everything and didn't. The relationship you thought would make you whole but left you lonelier in a different way. The achievement that felt hollow the moment it arrived. That hollowness isn't a malfunction. It's information. It's life telling you that you've been asking the wrong question. In September 1942, Viktor Frankl was arrested. He was taken first to Theresienstadt, then to Auschwitz, then to 2 smaller camps. He was forced to work in freezing temperatures in thin clothing. He watched people die beside him. His wife Tilly died in Bergen-Belsen. His mother was killed in Auschwitz. His brother died in a camp as well. He had nothing, not freedom, not comfort, not the certainty of seeing tomorrow. And in the middle of all of that, he started paying attention. He noticed something that the camp guards couldn't see. That among the prisoners, there were people who shared their last piece of bread with strangers, who told quiet jokes to keep others from collapsing, who found, even there, reasons to remain human. And he noticed something else. The prisoners who survived the longest, who maintained the most psychological resilience, were not always the strongest physically. They were the ones who had found something to live for, a child they were determined to see again, a manuscript they hadn't finished, a question they still needed to answer. It wasn't happiness that kept them alive. It couldn't be. There was nothing to be happy about. It was meaning. Frankl later wrote about one particular walk through the darkness, before dawn, marching to a worksite. The prisoners were exhausted. The guards were cruel. And he found himself thinking about his wife, not knowing yet that she was already gone, imagining her face, talking to her in his mind. He wrote, "I understood how a man who has nothing left in this world still may know bliss. Bliss in Auschwitz. Not because his circumstances were good, but because his inner life, his connection to something that mattered, had not been taken from him." That was the discovery that would become logotherapy, the idea that the primary human drive is not pleasure, not power, but meaning. So if meaning is the answer, what does it actually look like in a real ordinary life? Not in a concentration camp, not in a survival situation, but on a Tuesday afternoon when you're tired and nothing feels particularly significant. Frankl identified 3 distinct sources of meaning, And what makes them powerful is that at least one of them is available to you at any moment, no matter what your circumstances are. The first source is what you give to the world. Your work, your creativity, your contribution. It doesn't have to be grand. A teacher who genuinely cares about one struggling student. A baker who takes pride in the texture of the bread. A parent who shows up consistently, even when it's exhausting. The act of making something or caring for something with real attention and intention generates meaning. Not because of the outcome, but because of the investment of self. The second source is what you receive from the world. A piece of music that stops you in the middle of what you were doing. A conversation that makes you feel less alone. A moment of unexpected beauty light through a window, the smell of rain, a child laughing at something small. The capacity to be moved by the world is itself a form of meaning. The third source, and this is the most radical one, is the attitude you choose towards suffering you cannot avoid. Frankl was not saying that suffering is good. He was not telling anyone to be grateful for pain. He was saying something more precise, that when suffering cannot be removed, the way you face it still belongs to you. No one can take that away. And in that small, impossible freedom, the freedom to choose your response, there is meaning. This is why meaning is always available, even on the worst days, even after loss, even in the absence of every other source. You cannot always choose what happens to you, but you can always choose what it means. If you're watching this and thinking, I don't know what my meaning is, that's okay. Meaning is not something you find fully formed. It's something you discover by paying close attention to what makes you feel alive and what makes you feel empty. The difference between those two states is the most honest map you have. If this is already making you see your own life differently, stay with me, because the next part is where most people get stuck, and it's the part that actually changes things. Most of us spend our lives asking the same question. What do I want? What will make me happy? What am I missing? What should I be doing with my life? These feel like the right questions. They feel like self-awareness. But Frankl noticed something uncomfortable about them. They always lead back to the same place. More desire, more comparison, more of the feeling that something is missing. He proposed something that sounds strange at first. Stop asking what you expect from life and start asking what life expects from you. This isn't about obligation. It isn't about doing things you hate. It's about a shift in orientation. When you ask, what do I want? The answer is always incomplete because desire is endless. But when you ask, what is waiting for me to do it? Something quieter answers back. Maybe it's a relationship that has been waiting for your full attention. Not performance, not management, but real presence. Maybe it's a skill you've been postponing because it doesn't promise an immediate return. Maybe it's a conversation you've been avoiding because you know it will cost you something. Whatever that answer is, however small it feels, that is where your meaning lives. Frankl wasn't talking about a single grand purpose. He was talking about responding. Life is constantly presenting you with situations that call for something. Most of the time, we're too distracted, too anxious, too focused on what we want to notice, what we're being asked for. The shift is subtle, but it changes everything about how a day feels. Instead of moving through life waiting to receive, you move through it ready to respond. And that readiness, that openness, is closer to what happiness actually is than any achievement you could chase. You don't need to overhaul your life. Frankl didn't ask that of anyone. What he suggested was something much simpler, something you can begin today without any preparation. At the end of each day, before you check your phone, before you run through tomorrow's to-do list, ask yourself one question. Did I do something today that mattered to someone or something other than my own comfort? It doesn't have to be large. It almost never is. A conversation where you were fully present instead of half somewhere else. A piece of work you finished with care rather than just speed. A moment where you chose honesty over ease. A small kindness you gave without needing anyone to notice. These things don't feel significant in the moment. That's the point. Meaning rarely announces itself. It accumulates quietly. the way roots grow underground long before anything appears above the surface. Frankl observed that meaning and happiness have an inverse relationship with attention. The more directly you pursue happiness, the more it retreats. The more you invest in meaning, even in small, invisible ways, the more happiness quietly follows. Not loudly, not all at once, but in the way that a life, looking back, begins to feel like it belonged to you. So the practice is simple, even if it isn't easy. Stop running toward the light that keeps moving. Turn around, look at what's in front of you, ask what it needs, and begin there. If this video found you at a moment when you needed it, that's not an accident. Share it with someone you know who has been running on that treadmill for too long, not as advice, just as a quiet thing you found and wanted to pass on. And if you want to keep exploring ideas like this, ideas that don't just inform, but quietly change the way you see yourself, subscribe. Not to fill a feed, but to keep walking.